So when you have a wild harvested animal, there's a bunch of different options for what you can do with the meat. And one of those options is to make sausages. Sausages are an amazing way to fit a bunch of flavor into one amazing little casing. And this right now is your intro to making wild game sausages. So when you're making sausages, there's a few things that you need, and one of the main things you need is some sort of sausage stuffing equipment. We've already ground our meat, and a meat grinder is an exceptional tool. You have to get that meat broken down from that whole muscle tissue into something that's small, granular, and soft. So a meat grinder is definitely one of those tools that you need. You can get attachments for your kitchen mixers, but a meat grinder is going to be your best high volume tool that you can have for grinding your meat. The second piece of equipment that you need is a stuffer. Again, a lot of grinders come with a stuffing attachment. They don't necessarily work as good just because the auger works a little harder to grab that loose meat once it's already mixed and seasoned. If you want to go that step farther and make it a little easier on yourself, get yourself a stuffer. You can pick one up for anywhere from $150 on Amazon to above. You've got a few different options that typically come with a sausage stuffer, and they just go onto the front. You've got sort of a small, medium, and a large. The funnel tip that you use will be largely dictated by the type of casing that you have. So we'll go through casing in just a second. The next thing that is super handy when making sausages is to have some sort of scale, whether you have a digital scale or an old school style. Make sure that you have a scale because most sausage recipes go by weight and volume. So if you can add your meat and then the weight of all of the extra ingredients and spices that go into it, making sure that you have the right weight to salt ratio is also super important. So having a scale of some sort is definitely a handy tool. A few different things that you can add to the kitchen are a nice stainless steel bowl. This makes things super easy for mixing the ingredients when you have them all together. A rubber tub or a plastic tub like this. This is amazing because it fits underneath your meat grinder. So when you're grinding your meat, there's nothing awkward going on. It just falls into this tub. You can have a few of these. They're super inexpensive. The last tool that I find to be extremely handy is just a baking sheet like this one, a large baking sheet. This is also another tool that aids in catching the sausage when it comes out of the stuffer. Usually when you're stuffing the sausages, the funnel is really low and you don't want it spinning out on your counter. Sometimes even a cutting board is too high to place underneath. So a sheet like this is perfect. When you're cranking out your sausages, they land onto this tray and it's just a nice clean and tidy place to have your meat land before you go into the vacuum sealing step. The most important part in casing a sausage is to have a casing of some sort. So there's a few different options when it comes to sausage casings. You can get pork, you can get lamb, you can also get a synthetic casing like I have here. This is just sort of a collagen-based casing that you see on a lot of smokies, breakfast sausages, and hot dogs. It's made out of a natural material, and the sausage just gets stuffed into here, and it's really kind of a friendly way to stuff a sausage. But the way I prefer, and if you want that nice little snap that comes along with biting into a nice fresh sausage, you can go with a natural casing. Pork casing is a really cost-effective way to stuff your sausages. It's natural, it adds, an amazing snap to that bite when you bite into your sausage. There's a bunch of different options out there. Find the one that works for you. Find the casing that fits the funnel attachment on your stuffer best and start making some sausages. The flavors are really limitless and the amount of things that you can stuff into a sausage are really limitless, so you can be very creative with it. One of those things is cutting your wild game with some sort of fat, because wild game is typically pretty lean. You can cut your wild game with some pork fat or some beef fat, which I really enjoy. Often we see wild game sausages have a third cut of pork in there. Totally up to you. You can be creative. So for the venison sausage that I'm making right now, about a third of my overall mixture is going to be made with some pork. Now for the seasoning and meat mixing portion, I'm going to weigh my meat, mix it with all of my spices, and then it'll be ready to get stuffed. So all I have to do is get my scale out. In this recipe, I need 2 pounds of venison and 1 pound of pork. All of my spices go in, mix it up by hand really, really well, let it sit for a few minutes, and then it'll be ready to be loaded into the hopper for stuffing. The details on this recipe specifically will be available in another video, but right now I'm just walking you through the steps so you can be comfortable with making sausages on your own. Meat mixture is done, and now all I need to do is grab a few handfuls of this and make sure that it's stuffed right into the bottom of the sausage stuffer. And I'll just do that until it's filled to the top. And once it's full, I can just get the hopper into the stuffing mechanism and lower the crank so that the piston is just covering the top. All right, so for this sausage, I'm just using the collagen casing. If you happen to have a hog casing or a lamb casing, just make sure that you have the bit that fits that appropriately. Essentially, you want to slide the casing on to the funnel until it's around to the tip. And all I'm gonna do is just make sure that I pull it and evenly slide it on as far back as I can. So part of this process as well, if I happen to pump all of this meat through the sausage stuffer and I run out of casing, that's no problem. You can pinch it off. You can put new casing on there and just keep on cranking. So let's give this a cut. So now I'm going to crank this thing down until I feel a little bit of resistance. And that means that the plunger has met up with the meat. Once I start applying pressure to that, it will shoot that meat down through the funnel and start filling the casing. So what I want to do is make sure that I leave a little bit of room at the tip of my funnel. So I'm going to give myself a couple of inches of extra casing. There's really no harm in doing that. And as I start to crank, you'll see the meat coming through the tip. And what I want to do is make sure that I control with my other hand here the amount of meat that is actually coming and filling into the casing. Hold back the casing with your one hand so that it fills fairly tightly the casing, and it'll just sort of go about its own business and fill it naturally. So give it a little bit of room. You can back the pressure off of your crank a little bit on the stuffer. Give yourself a little bit of extra space, about an inch or so of casing on the end, and this sausage is ready to just set aside for the moment while I set this thing up with another bit of casing, and we'll just continue on until the hopper is empty. So stuffing these went nice and smoothly. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to link these sausages. There's a little trick to it, so I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. And that little tag end of casing that we left, all we really need to do is pinch it and make sure we burp all the air out of it and give it a nice little twist so that it's nice and tight. You can go ahead and tie a knot in there too. If you have a natural casing, it's a little easier. So what you need to do is gauge with your eyes the length of sausage that you'd like. So I'm gonna put a little indentation there. And I'm gonna go over another 5-inch length and make a little indent there. So I'm gonna grab with my left and right hand those indents that I made, give a little pinch, and what I find works really good is if you just sort of get it into the little crotch of your finger there and just give it a little pinch and squeeze, and then start to twist that middle portion, and that will give you a sausage. So you can twist that multiple times and you can see how that's starting to take shape. Now, the important part is, as you realize with that first sausage, I didn't twist the first sausage, I twisted the second one. So we're gonna continue on doing that exact same thing. I have my first sausage now from the end of the link. I'm gonna leave that, mark it at about 5 inches, go on to the next section, and I'm gonna twist the middle one. So this sausage here is getting formed by me twisting this one. So I'm gonna grab that, give it a little squeeze, and now I will start the twist. Same thing, move on to the next one. We're going to forget about this sausage length here, give a little indent, move on to this middle section, pinch, and give it a little twist. And that is it. With the excess that I have, it's around the same length of the sausages that I made. So now I've got this beautiful run of linked sausages, and I can sort of fold these up. I can cut them into segments and smoke them, fry them, or throw them in the vacuum sealer, toss them in the freezer, and they're good to go for whenever you want to eat them. All right, so that's kind of it. This is the introduction to making sausages. Like I said at the beginning, this is a bit of a learning process, and all you need to do is get some minimal equipment and start making some sausages on your own. You can use any ingredient under the sun, as long as you understand the basics for mixing your meat and stuffing it and making sausages. You can get started making your own wild game sausages. Regarding the actual sausage recipes and all of the ingredients that went into this and more, I'll have more videos coming out in the future that you can follow along and learn how to make specific types of sausages. But for more information and details on this process, check the blog post link below.